Hi, timekeepers. Thanks for stopping through my Reader Minutes. To all that are new here, welcome. To all that have decided to join me on my journey, thank you so much. And welcome to the Timekeeper Crew. We're going to talk about Love and Marriage Huntsville. For those of y'all that are still watching or just want to get, just of what's going on and keeping up. I know a lot of us are not watching it anymore. I watch it because it's nothing else on TV. So I've been watching it and I'm going to continue to do it. I think this is their last season. I don't know if this is considered season 10 or season 11. If you watch it on OWN, it's season 11. If you watch it on, I don't know, I think it's season 10, episode 21, 22, something like that. I don't know, but we're going to go with the app because it's just more easy to keep up with all the episodes. So right now we're season 11, episode 7, called Quilting Me Softly. I don't even know why it was called Quilting Me Softly because Ken and Trish were not the main people in this episode. And it should have been called The Common Denominator. Even though I know Marsau did a little joke on the common denominator, common numerator thing. I think this episode should have been called Common Denominator because in all of the episodes, in all of the scenes, even if they weren't in the scene, they were a part of the scene, meaning Tisha or Marsau. So Ken and Trish had their own little thing going on, and I will briefly talk about them, but I'm not going to stay on them. I'm not going to stay on this episode at all that long, but I do want to review it because I've been reviewing it for the last couple of years, and I'm just going to continue to do it until it's no longer aired anymore. So, with that being said, let's get started. Why don't we, right? The first scene is Kimmy and Destiny. Destiny, I think Kimmy basically said she had called Destiny to the office because it was some paperwork that she wasn't able to get from the client. So Destiny was willing to, bring it by the office so she'd have it. In the meantime, of course, they engage in conversation. I think Kimmy starts out with saying, they're all entrepreneurs. They're all in kind of a real estate type thing, whether they be agents, brokers, and they all work together. And she mentions to Destiny that the only person that she really hasn't worked with has been the Fletchers, specifically Chris. And then, of course, brings up the fact that at the party, how she realized that, or somebody brought up the fact that Chris didn't have his license anymore. And she said, based on how things went at the winery, she didn't feel like that was the time to reach out to say anything to Nell about what was going on with Chris because she felt like she wasn't really close enough to, ask any questions because their friendship isn't like that. She even goes on to say that sometimes her and Nell have to like bump heads a little bit. Yeah, they do. They have a little bump head type thing. And I don't know. That all started, I think, around when they went away on that girls' trip that Melody kind of like hosted. And her and Kimmy got into it. I don't remember them having any issues prior to that. But anyway, so she basically said that Destiny for real is the closest one to Nell that could probably speak for the group. And then she goes on to say she feels like her and Tisha are okay. And Destiny's like, yeah. She said, I think we're in a good space. She said, but Tisha has friendship Tourette's. She said, I'm mad at you. She just jumps up. She said, you never know. Like 1 minute they're okay. And then next thing she says, I'm mad at you. And the way she kept saying it, I guess Kimmy was like, wait a minute now. This is kind of taking like a negative connotation because she was laughing at her. Honestly, she was laughing at her saying that. Mind you, Kimmy was the one that brought up Tisha, not Destiny. Let's clear that up right here. But she basically said she never knows who she's going to get. And she says, yeah, she said, but I think you all have worked that out because, again, Kimmy's riding the fence. She doesn't really, but me personally, I think that Kimmy rides the fence because she likes to keep the peace. She understands Tisha's personality. She understands that Tisha is needy. She understands that Tisha is somewhat insecure. She's not going to say it to her, right? She's not going to say it to her, but she's going to keep the peace when it comes to her and her because they probably do a lot of things together because of the brothers. So she has to keep the peace, and if she wants to keep the peace, come around the family. Tisha's been around the family longer, so you don't want that rivalry going on, and you're trying to, you're new to the group, so to speak. Not new, because I think there's a wife after her that's come on board with their brother Mike. I think don't they have a brother named Mike? He just got married not too long ago. But anyway, the fact is, she wants to keep the peace in the family. She is the second wife, and the second wife usually has it a little bit harder, especially if they like the first wife. You know what I mean? So, sorry, y'all, I digress. But anyway, they go back and forth, and basically, Destiny's letting her know that it's not like that. She thinks her and Tisha are in a good spot. But again, Tisha has some issues, and I agree with Destiny. I agree with Destiny hands down. The second scene is with Ken and Will. And Ken invites Will out to meet him to get something to eat. Will brings up the fact that Ken invited him out to a party, and lo and behold, he wasn't expecting who Ken was going to be with. Evidently, he's with someone else, and he wasn't Trish. And he said, "What's up with you and her? What's that about?" And he's like, "Oh, well, she's someone I just met, about a month ago." He indicated she was a traveling nurse. She comes across a little softer than Trish. She is self-sufficient. I'm paraphrasing. He's not much he needs to do to her. She's standing on her own. She doesn't require a lot from me. Then he goes on to say that Trish knew about her. Evidently, people were taking pictures and sent her pictures of whoever he was out with. And Will says, "Wait a minute, you're taking her out in public?" And he was like, "Well, we're cool." He was like, when we left, when him and Trisha split, it was more so one he was trying to get her back or whatever. He said, but he was like, "I'm doing me." And so but he did it. He put it out there, and he made it seem like he did it just so it would get back to Trish to see if she would have some type of feeling or whatever. But the way Trish emotions are set up, she doesn't show them. If she has any, she doesn't show them. And evidently, she had known for a while, evidently, but she knew. She brought it to his attention, and he said that she didn't show any emotion. Which should have been a flag for him, because later on we'll find out that the reason why she probably didn't have any emotion because she was out there doing her thing. Basically, he loves what him and Trisha had. He misses the things that they used to do together, but he's really not at that point like, I got to go back home. Like, I guess he don't miss it that much. That's what I got from it. Next scene, Tisha and Marsau. And they are hanging out together. I guess they're doing Top Golf or whatever. And Tisha says she likes golf. She likes dressing up in her little outfits, being cute, basically. And basically, Marcel says, "Well, I bought her a set of golf clubs. She's never used them." She said, "I packed them on our whatever number anniversary. They went away or whatever." And he said, "Yeah, you never used one of them." So they talk or whatever. And then she brings up the fact that her and Kimmy met up, and she relayed to her that Destiny was talking about her behind her back. So Marcel looks back at her and says, like, "Well, okay, well, if you put her in a do not trust hoe box, you really think that y'all had a good relationship?" And Tisha's like, "Yeah." She said, "Because I thought we were in a good place." She said, "When I said it initially, I was joking." And he said, "Well, when you joke and put something in the trash, is it not trash just because you put it in there because you're joking about it?" I understood it, but it was kind of a crazy analogy. But anyway, so she was like, "Well, I'm gonna have to talk to her because I want to have a conversation about it because I don't." She says, "I felt like me and her were in a better place than where we are." So then Marcel brings up the fact that he met up with Chris Fletcher, and addressed, why he didn't tell him about him getting his license revoked. Like, why didn't he tell him? And basically told Tisha, he told me, "Well, who the F was I?" And Tisha was like, "Whoa." And so, but after Marceau explained it to her, she said, "Well, at the end of the day, he really don't owe you that." She said, "Because y'all didn't have no business together. So he really don't owe you that." And so in the confessional, Marceau says, "Look, I'm going to need you to be on the side that's right. And your husband is that side." And Tisha was like, "No." Oh, and then he brought up the fact that he got into it with his brother, Maurice. And she was like, "What y'all getting into it for?" He explains that they're upset about the restaurant. I forgot. I can't remember what lane it's on, Jewelry Lane or something like that. And, and he was talking about motivating me by trying to sue me. And she was like, "Sue you?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he said, "I might have called him like a grimy or slimy lawyer, whatever." She was like, "Well, why would you call him that?" She said, "That's not right." And she said, "Well, it's right for him to say that he's going to sue me." But she didn't really get involved in that. Um, she didn't really say much. She didn't even really actually comment on that. She didn't say nothing about Kimmy getting on Maurice about it. She didn't even say nothing about them two getting into it. She was just like, oh my gosh, she stayed out of it. But Maurice said, like, "I'm getting into it with Maurice and Chris. You get into it with Destiny and Nell." He was like, he said, "It's all their fault." He said, "They're the common numerators." That was funny. And then Tisha said, "Yeah, that's right. I agree." But this whole episode should have been called Common Denominator. That's where I got that from. Because they're in all the scenes, except for the Ken and Trish ones. So the next scene is Destiny and Nell. Destiny invites Nell out to get a foot bath or spa days, but they were getting a foot bath. And I guess it releases all the toxins in your body. Just soak your feet in whatever they put in there and all that kind of stuff. So they're sitting there talking, and Nell brings up the fact that she did meet with Tisha, and Destiny said, "Okay, how did that go?" And she said, it went good." She said, "I felt like, it was coming from a genuine place." So Destiny said, "Do you think it was coming from a genuine place because she was by herself?" And then she didn't really comment on the fact that she was by herself. She said she just really felt like it was a genuine thing. She said even back to when they were at the party, at Lance's party, and Tisha basically said, "Well, what does that look like? What does it look How can we help you? What does that look like?" And she said it seemed like she kind of started reaching out there and to give Destiny indication that she wasn't by herself then. So I caught that now. She said, "Well, good. I'm glad to hear that." And then she talks about how Marsau and Fletch got into it, and she said evidently Marcel asked about Chris's license and wanted to know why he didn't tell him about his license being revoked. And like she said, "Yeah, he must have said something. I thought you were my guy, and I thought we were, cool, whatever." And he was like telling Chris that his license belongs to the community or he owes something to the community. And she said, "But in Marceau's defense," and Destiny's like, "Yeah, I gotta hear the rest of this. Going for Marceau's defense." She said, "I told Fletch that he did owe some type of commitment to the community and to the people that were around him." She said, "Because a lot of people that he mentors or come to him for advice, he owes them an explanation as to what's going on." And Destiny kind of agreed with that. She said, "Yeah, me as well." She said, "Because me being an agent, she said, I've gone to him." And so she was like, he mentors a lot of people. So he does, in a way, is obligated to some degree, you know, an explanation or some type of commitment to the community. I think Destiny says she spoke to Kimmy. She had gone by Kimmy's office and she had brought up the fact that she was concerned about, Fletcher's losing his license. And she said, or I think she said something about she wanted to reach out to Nell. She said, but she realized that she didn't have the relationship to reach out to Nell. She said she had a lot of questions and she didn't think that she had the relationship to actually reach out to her. And Nell said, "Yeah, she right. She right. She shouldn't reach out." And she said she could have all the questions. She can have all the questions she wants. She said, but keep them to her damn self. Yeah, they don't see eye to eye. They be bumping heads. So the next scene is Marcel and his daughter. I can't remember her name, Macy. And I always like their scenes together. I think that's cute. I always like when the parents are with their kids. Not so much Kimmy and Jalen because he's a grown man, but I like him with the kids. You know what I'm saying? I don't even care for Nell talking to her grown ass kids. When they're grown, it's not the same dynamic. But I like it when they're in that stage when they're kind of young. Like I always like to see Martell and Mel with their kids as they were growing up. Cute scenes. So I always like Marceau and his daughter Macy. I even liked him with his son, right? But I think after they get a certain age, that cuteness is not cute no more. You know what I mean? They're kids, and you like to see the relationship, but it's a little different. Anyway, I think Macy might be 13, 14. And that daggone Marceau is funny. But anyway, so he is like bringing out this lawnmower. And he said he's not going to do gender roles anymore. He said he needs her to step up to be the old just step up to be the child of the house. And she's like, "No, I need you to continue to being the man of the house, and you cut or the parents of the house, and y'all cut your own grass." Because she knew that he was trying to put that burden or that chore on her since MJ has gone off to school, and she was like, "No, I think you need to continue to be the man of the house." And I thought that was funny, and they were going back and forth. And when she comes out the house, he was like, "Macy, why you ain't got no pants on?" She said, "I do got pants on." And she had on shorts. But I wanted to say, well, Martha, why you ain't got no shoes on? Who cuts grass with no shoes? He was walking around in his socks. So you could tell that this was staged because both of them were in the house. So he had to make up something to talk about. Because why you ain't got no shoes on? You could at least made it look real like you had on your work boots or something. Anyway, so they sit down on the porch and he starts talking to her about boys and her going into high school and saying that, he said, when you get to the point where you're 47, 46 years old and want to get married, and she already clicked, hones in on that. She's like, why am I getting married at 46, 47? What do you mean? And he was like, humor me. Oh, no, she said, when I'm in college, she said, no, Macy, you're not getting married when you're in college. She said, well, you got married when you were in college. She said, I didn't get married till after college. She said, well, I'll get married after college then. He said, well, I don't want you dating older guys, especially not in high school. He said, because they are at the age where they think they can manipulate and take advantage of girls your age. So what kind of boys do you like? And she said they have to be smart, and nice. He said, oh, you like men like your daddy. And he was like, how they look? And he was like, are they bald like me? And she was like, no. So, it was really cute. And he was basically telling her some good stuff. Try not to get with the older guys because they're very manipulative. They take advantage of girls that come in thinking that they can control them. And I'm paraphrasing, but basically he was giving her some manly advice. But this whole scene was manufactured, but I liked it. The fact that he was having a scene with his daughter. I like him. I like that, but that I like the dynamic between him and his daughter Macy. And she looks like Wanda. Now we all know that Tisha, of course, resembles her mom. They all got them deep dimples. But she really looks like Wanda, down to the eyes. You could tell when she was looking at her eyes, the nose, everything. She is Wanda down. She looks more like Wanda, I think, than Tisha does. Right? And maybe because Tisha wears makeup, maybe she would look more like Wanda if she wasn't so fixed up. Macy is a natural beauty because she's young. She's not really wearing makeup like that. And we're seeing lashes on Tisha. So she might look more like Wanda with no makeup. But Macy looks like Wanda. Yes, she does. Is Trish and her girlfriend Sharon. And they meet at this sewing place, which I think this is where they got the name of the episode from. Quilting Me Softly. Okay. But who even knew that Trisha doesn't come across as someone that sits down and sews, but she says she sews her outfits or whatever, makes her outfits. She could do that. Anywho, she's talking to her girlfriend Sharon, and her girlfriend Sharon says, "You seem to have your happy back." She said, "I like this about you." And so Trish goes in and tells her about, how her and Ken have been off and on, off and on. They stopped talking for 2 days, off, go back and forth. And evidently, this is where she kind of lets us know that she knows that Kim was out there doing stuff. She's known for some time, but she kept asking him and he would never tell the truth. But she already knew. And I guess that's what Ken was referring to before, saying that Trish already knew. So I'm thinking that by her knowing that he had someone or he was seeing someone, she started doing her thing. That's why when she actually confronted him about who this was or who he was seeing, she had no emotion because she had already knew it. She probably had already internalized it. She'd already moved on psychologically because she was doing her thing. So that's why she didn't come across as having any type of emotion or feeling. Without having that context, the way Ken talked about it, it was like Trish had no feeling. But she had a chance to sit with it for a while. And who's to say how long a while was? Because he wasn't being upfront with her with his seeing anybody. But she kept giving him opportune chances. She kept giving him chances to come clean, and he wouldn't. She kept saying that he wasn't dealing with nobody or whatever. So finally, when I guess when she finally showed it to him, she let him know, I know. And then I guess when he asked her, was she seeing somebody? She said, I was up front. She said, yes, I am. She was like, boom. And she said, that's how I wanted you to be. But when he was talking to Will, we didn't get that context. We got, oh, she knew about it, but she didn't say anything. Right. She just didn't show any emotions. And she said, so Will was like, yeah, it makes you wonder if they care. She probably did. When she first found out about it, she probably went through her own internal thing. You got to remember, evidently, she's gone through this before with Marquez, who she is technically still married to. And she's had to do a lot of internalizing, right? This is not new to Trish, right? So they both decided to do their own thing, it looks like, at this moment. I don't blame Ken for doing, he should have been gone, honestly, my opinion, because Trish is not even divorced yet. In this moment, she's still married to Marquez. Why are you still sticking around? How long are they going to drag this divorce out? I thought that they were divorced. I thought that they were. Maybe they are now, but I don't even think they are now. Every time they come up in an episode, they're not divorced. Anyway, but at the end of this segment or at the end of this scene, she comes back and says, but I really do love Ken. What? Huh? It's crazy. To me, their relationship is toxic. And they don't need to be around each other. Regardless if they care for them. I feel like it's not so much that they love each other. They're used to one another. You're familiar. You're comfortable. And sometimes it's hard to move out of a comfortable space, even when you know it's not right. And I really think that they need to move on. My opinion. Next scene. This is with Destiny and Tisha. And Destiny has invited Tisha to her open house. Well, Tisha already came in there with her, probably all her questions, what she wanted to say to Destiny. She probably already rehearsed everything. And because she came in the door being shady and made a comment, said, oh, congratulations. This your first listing? And Destiny's like, no, this is not my first listing. And her thing was, Destiny basically says she knows this isn't my first listing because evidently Tisha's been a broker for her before. And so she was like, oh, so Tisha was trying to play it off and trying to be phony. She says, oh, well, I just saw, evidently somebody else's face was on the sign out front. And she said, I just figured, you were, sitting for her or whatever. And she was like, no, no. If you're actually doing a home, she said that the listing is yours. If you're listing for, I don't know how to explain it. But anyway, she said, no, no, if you either sell a home or you don't. And then Tisha's basically saying, well, if you're new to a realty group, and they usually give the listings to the houses that they don't really want to be bothered with or they don't want to do. She said, there's nothing wrong with that. She said, I was just, she said, just answer the questions. Why are you coming there like that? Like, if you, first of all, Tisha, my thing is, if you weren't going to be sincere and you just wanted to come there to address her about what she said to Kimmy, that's how she should have kept it. Don't come in there being phony and throwing shade through other avenues. Because Destiny was catching it, but she was still just like, You know, like it's like a lot going on. So then they sit down and Tisha says, "Oh, well, I've heard you had a lot of meetings with the ladies lately." Tisha just come out with it and saying, "Kimmy told me you said that he say she say bull crap," because we really don't know how Kimmy went back and said anything, right? And we don't know if she's already making this stuff up in her head because Tisha has a tendency to do that. Anyway, so Destiny's like, "I haven't had any meetings with anybody but now." She said, "Oh yeah, I did meet with Kimmy to give her some paperwork for a client or whatever." And she said, "Yeah." She said, "I heard you." Tisha says, "Oh, well, I've heard that you've been meeting with the lady, had some meetings with the ladies." And Destiny's like, "No, I haven't met with anybody but now." And then she said, "Oh yeah, I did meet with Kimmy because because she had to, we had to sign some paperwork for her upcoming closing." She said, "But and then it was kind of awkward. They were just sitting there, and so Destiny's like, "But yeah, I did hear that you and Nell met up and that y'all kind of made amends." And Tisha said, "Yeah, yeah, it went well." She said, after, seeing the hurt on her face at Lance's party, and she said, "I feel like, I would put my feelings to the side as I do all the time. That, that we really all need to be, supportive because she has a lot going on. And I saw the hurt in her face, and I felt like I could be more of a support because she has a lot going on." And Destiny said, "That's funny." She said, "Because when I said all that before," she said, "that's the perspective that I wanted you to see it in." She said, "Because I mentioned all that to you before." So then they go into this conversation where Tisha felt like when Nell brought back, when Tisha, I'm sorry, let me get this together. When Destiny brought back the conversation between her and Nell back to Tisha about, telling Tisha keep my name out her mouth and all that kind of stuff when it came to her leaving the reunion early last season. Um, she felt like, Destiny wasn't there for her. Like she didn't take up for her, where in her mind, in Tisha's mind, she's always spoken up for Destiny and she's always um, spoke up for her, even in rooms she wasn't in. And she felt like she didn't get that from Destiny. And so Destiny was basically saying, "Well, tell me, when have I not been there for you?" And so she brought up that one particular time and she was like, "Well, I'm not going to war with Nell with you. I'm not going to war with anybody with you." And that's what Tisha is. Tisha has this notion that people, it's still high school to me. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm mad with somebody because me and you are friends, you need to be mad with them too. Or if I'm out of the room and they bring me up, you need to go to bat for me. She said, "It's been plenty of times when I've gone to bat for you and you weren't in the room when people were talking about you." So she was like, "I've never had to do that." She was like, "I'm not going to war for you." And then she brought up the fact that she was talking behind her back with Kimmy and she act like her voice was getting weak, like she wanted to cry. It's like, how, oh my gosh. Tisha is very insecure and she's needy. This is my perception of her. I could be wrong. I don't think I am. But she's very insecure and she's needy. And she didn't like the fact that she was saying stuff behind her back. We don't know exactly how Kimmy went back and said anything. But when they were talking, Kimmy was laughing right along with Destiny, even though for camera purposes, and I want to say it's for camera purposes, she basically said, um, "Destiny, that has a little negative connotation to it. I don't know if you need to do that." I think she just said that for the cameras because she was laughing too much with Destiny because she was agreeing with her. That's my personal opinion. Don't know for sure, but that's my personal opinion. So to me, it just sounds like she's like, well, why? And then all of a sudden she just got loud. She's like, why would you talk to me? Of all people, why would you talk to Kimmy about me? Like she wouldn't come back and tell me. Well, she had to come back and tell you something because she says you already know that she filmed saying something about you, Tisha. Had the cameras been down and she had that same conversation with Destiny, I bet you wouldn't have heard not one word. My opinion. So Destiny's like, you doing too much. She said, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work being your friend. And she ain't lying. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. And I don't think, and again, we already know that Kimmy basically said if she had a choice to be Tisha's friend, if she wasn't married to Maurice, she would not be Tisha's friend. The only reason why she is the way she is, they are sister-in-laws. Sort of, kind of. Not really, because you know what I'm saying? They're not really sister-in-laws, to be honest. They're just both married to brothers. Anyway, so she's like, oh, people, why would you tell her that? Blah, 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 blah. And so basically, I'm getting this to be the bottom line is that Tisha wants total loyalty from everybody. And if she's mad with somebody, then they need to be mad with them too. I'm really curious as to how she's going to be with Kimmy regarding this Drury Lane building because she knows that Kimmy was on Maurice to talk to Marsau. I want to see how that pans out. She might not get in it, but I don't know. We'll see. Because she's the one. I have her then she may side with Kimmy. Knowing the facts, if she goes by the facts, and if she goes by the facts that the fact that they are behind in schedule, you know, as far as their delivery date, if they're a year behind or what have you, she could side with Kimmy and understand Kimmy's pain. But on the same token, if there was things that should have been done on Maurice and Kimmy's part, as far as because they keep making changes, putting out new plans, or pushing out the project, making it, not being on time or being able to be delivered at the date that they initially set out for, that we'll see. We'll see how that works out. But at the end of this scene, Destiny is kind of like walking behind Tisha. Tisha's mad. She's upset. She's ready to leave. And, she was like, I'm a lot of work. She was like, okay. She said, look at all your text messages, see how I was there for you, even when we weren't filming, how I was there for you. And I think even Destiny mentions that I was there for you when Kiki died. She said, I was at your house. She said, I was there for you when you went through that. Tisha said, that was a year ago. She said, you've changed. That daggone Tisha. Anyway, so Destiny's like yelling at her out the door. She was like, look, she said, people call you dumb and I'm always taking up for you and everything. She was like, you always want to play the victim and all that kind of stuff. You need to stop that stuff with your little miserable self. And that's how it went off. So what do y'all think about that? It doesn't surprise me. Tisha's like that. But you know what I would love to see Tisha do? The same energy that she has for Destiny, the same energy that she had for Mel, the same energy that she has for I said Nell and for Mel, and same energy she even has for Nell before they call herself making amends. Why she don't never have that same energy for Marsau? Marsau can talk to her like she's 10. And she's like, yeah, but I know. And she's real meek and mild. Doesn't want to have an argument with him. Even when she actually is standing on business when it comes to Marsau, it's never like that. The energy is totally different. She never rah-rahs with him. And that's where sometimes it needs to go. I feel it. I feel like it should. Anyway, that's the end of that scene, y'all, that episode. Let's get in the comments and talk about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Everyone be blessed. Peace.